Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 182 of Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. This is the Stargate Oral History Project. We have Robin Mossley on, who played two characters in Stargate SG-1. He played Malikai in Window of Opportunity, and Dr. Reimer in Morpheus. Before we bring him in, if you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal to me if you click that like button. It makes a difference with YouTube and will help the show continue to grow. And please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And if you click the bell icon, you'll get notified the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes, because sometimes things shift pretty quickly. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on the Dial the Gate and gateworld.net YouTube channels. If you are in the YouTube chat, you can submit questions to Robin via the moderators, and they will go ahead and turn around and get those to me, and I can ask them to him. In the meantime, I want to thank Robin Mossley for joining us for this episode. Sir, it is a real treat to have you. I've been looking forward to this for a while now. How are you?
I'm fine. Hi, nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm curious to know if you are aware of the impact that your first episode, Window of Opportunity, and your guest appearance as Malikai has had on the Stargate community after all of this time. Routinely number one rated show of all of the franchise.
Well, people had told me that it was like one of the more popular ones. Yeah, so I kind of knew that it was sort of like a fan favorite in that. So that's nice. I'm glad that I'm in something that was so popular. Yeah.
Can you give me an idea of when you first knew that you wanted to act? How long did you have the acting bug? How old were you?
Oh, like grade 1, maybe something.
Really early on.
Yeah, really early. When I was in elementary I guess everybody thinks they're like an odd kid, but I wasn't like the most popular kid in elementary school, and then I found I could make people laugh. I think the first thing that happened is I got cast as the troll in Billy Goat Scruff Under the Bridge. And that's also where I found out that playing villains was like a really great thing. That villains get all the best lines and all the best laughs and all of the best stuff. And so, yeah, like really early on.
Yeah, okay. There is something to be said about playing the bad guy. Because I think that I think it'd be foolish to acknowledge that there isn't a little bit of bad in all of us every now and then, or the urge to, you know what, I could do this, but I really don't feel like it. I'd really like to take a little bit more self-interest here in this choice. Do you see that like reflected in some of the characters that you've played?
Yeah, I don't know how many I didn't get to. Oh, I got to play a few bad guys, I guess. Yeah. And Malikai was fun because he was. At first, he starts off as sort of a good guy, but he's not really evil. He's misguided, is what he is. But
right.
But yeah, so I got to play sort of a good scientist, technician kind of guy, and then I get to all of a sudden change and be the shoot to Daniel or whatever, and yeah, and then you find out that I'm not so bad after all. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Over the course of that show, is there any particular role that you had during your career that pushed you in ways that you didn't expect, or that that you got something out of the material that you, for your own personal satisfaction, that you weren't expecting?
Probably the most important one was because I used to do theater as well. I'd alternate. And in 1989, I got cast in this play, The Lion in Winter, which was a Kamloops. What was it? Yeah, it's an interesting take to this day. It was a Kamloops and Ottawa co-production, and the designer of it, who did the set and costumes, ended up being my wife. So that was a And the other thing that happened on that was when I went to do the very first day that I was on Window of Opportunity and outside my trailer, and Michael Shanks came up to me. And he said, "You probably don't remember this, but when you did The Lion in Winter in Kamloops, I was one of the spear carriers." And he was a high school kid, and they would get Western Canada Theatre in Kamloops. They were attached to a high school and use students and stuff for doing tech stuff, but also for acting in that. And I was in one of Michael Shanks's very first professional plays or
Wow.
acting jobs. Yeah.
It's a small
Tragically, I'd
world.
forgotten. I forgot. I'd say, oh yes, Michael, yes. But it was really sweet of him to come up and remind me. I think Amanda Tapping came to say hi, and Richard Dean Anderson. It was a really, really lovely cast of people. And Richard Dean Anderson, I knew quite well because I was like Mr. MacGyver. I did like about 8 MacGyvers, and I was in a couple of his favorite episodes as well, which were the westerns. He loved the westerns, so I got to play sort of a challenged gunslinger on these westerns that we did in MacGyver. And I think that's how I ended up eventually on Stargate, is because it was the same producers. It was Michael Greenberg and Stephen Downing. I think they must have liked me because they kept casting me on MacGyver.
Absolutely. So did you go out to audition for Malikai, or was this role offered for you?
I think I must have auditioned for it.
Okay.
I was a little because I'd done so many MacGyvers when I started the new series and stuff. I thought, I'm in like Flynn, like and I don't think I even got very many auditions for the first, because I think it was season 4, right? Was
yes.
Window of Opportunity, and so I can't even remember auditioning all of them. I remember feeling a bit sad over the fact that I wasn't getting called into auditions. And then, but it was they ended up giving me a really, really nice role, so that made up for it. It's probably because a lot of the stuff that I did in TV and that I didn't. A lot of the times it was sort of Basil exposition. It was phone for you, Mr. Selleck, or a lot of doctors and stuff. But again, I'd be setting up the a lot of expository stuff,
Yeah, exactly. You're moving the show forward for the other players.
Yeah, and so the window of opportunity, Malikai was a great role because I got to do a whole bunch of different stuff, and it was emotional and all that too. So.
Oh, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about that. Peter DeLuise directed that episode to perfection.
And, I love it. Such a nice guy. He must have really liked me too, because I worked with him. He cast me a number of times in things, because I did The Window of Opportunity was the first time I worked with him, and then what was it called? The Amanda's show, Sanctuary.
Yeah,
he
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary. And then I retired in 2011, and he directed the very last show that I did was R.L. Stein.
The Haunting Hour.
The Haunting Hour, yeah. And he directed that one. And I think I actually told him I was going to retire at that point. I'd gotten really, really anxious. I wasn't enjoying it much anymore. And I started to get really anxious and at that point, what had happened, it was 2011, what happened. So right after that, my father got ill. He was 89, and he went into the hospital, and he'd been looking after, he was still doing all the shopping and driving and cooking and stuff. I was looking after my mom. They lived right next door, and we didn't, even though we lived next door, we didn't realize how bad my mom had dementia, Alzheimer's. And when my dad got out of hospital, he couldn't look after her anymore. So I started looking after both of them, and I was still auditioning and stuff. And my lovely wife, who's got a really great career, she's a production designer now, but was a senior supervising art director. from all these big shows in Vancouver and stuff. And she said, just look after your folks. You don't have to act anymore. So I quit.
Yeah. Well, putting family first, that's, if we're lucky, we get to be able to do that. And, that's, I believe me, I understand where you're coming from there. Can you tell me about, who Malikai was on paper for you, in the audition? I mean, on the surface, he appears to be scientist working an ancient dig. There were some serious motivations underneath the hood there. Tell us about your impression of this wonderful character.
Just that, he was very rich. There was a lot happening. Like, I can't remember. Like, it was such a long time ago, David. Right?
I understand.
So like just realizing it was a really great part, right? There's a real art to him, and that it's a lovely emotional components as well. The fact that he lost his wife and he got to play that loss, and that lovely scene with Richard Dean Anderson. Richard Dean Anderson. I'm sure I was. You're always thrilled to get any kind of work, and the fact that it was also going to be like 5 days and a guest star.
Right.
I hadn't had I don't think I'd had a part that big for a little while. It had. I'm trying to think back. I think it was like, oh yeah, this is great because it's like 5 days or whatever. It's like, and it's just it's a really lovely, rich part with a lot of interesting things that I got to do. The hardest thing, but this is more getting on set and you was having to deal with the whack-a-mole, was the machine,
the device,
the time sheet, because it was all just kind of random, and when I was having to interact with it, I had to sort of like put my hands on it, so I had to look like I knew what I was doing. It was shifting around all over the place, right? So you're trying to like make sure that you're touching something that was inactive and not like on its way up or down, and then you also had to be acting your butt off as well. So that's the one thing that I remember. But probably the only bad thing from that entire shoot was having to deal with the whack-a-mole. But
absolutely.
Everything else was really lovely. Yeah, it was a great great experience and a great show. So I'm glad that it ended up being so popular.
Can you hold on for 5 seconds?
Sure.
Okay. I don't know if you saw.
Is that from the actual? Is that from the set? No.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I figure this might ring some bells for you.
Oh yeah. Well, it's all probably more for Michael and Richard Dean Anderson. They had to work with that a lot more than I did.
Right.
I was that was on the other wall. That was across the whack-a-mole for me. So I didn't actually get over there and look at that too much.
Yeah, this is from the dashboard. These are the buttons.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, see, it's so long ago that I didn't recognize.
It's all good.
Well, now it's coming back to me. Now it's giving me nightmares. Now oh yes, that thing. Oh God. Okay,
oh, that's funny. Yeah, no. A lot of people count that scene at the end of the episode where Rick confronts you, and 14, I think, worlds are hanging in the balance. They're about to get looped around again. And
Amanda has that line. Amanda. There's like a little bit of a progression, and it's Amanda who says that there's 10 worlds, or 14 worlds, or something. Yeah. And so she says that. So that's sort of the realization that I'm kind of like, and I'm screwing over a whole like bunch of people. Not it's worse. I hadn't realized it was as bad as all that. But then it's Rick after that talking about my
losses,
deceased wife. Yeah,
mutual loss. I think that it's a great scene because it's a great episode because it has all the layers of what we as fans of this series have come to love about the franchise, which is it's character first, it's comedy, and it's drama, and it's action, all weaved back and forth together. But at the end of the day, it's about heart, and that we can, even though we're working at cross purposes against one another, we can set everything aside and say, okay, what's really going on? Why are you doing what you're doing? And truly stop and listen. And in this particular situation, his wife had a congenital heart defect. If she had died from a car crash or something, we might have been continuing on for a very long time. But they listened to one another, and that scene, that moment where he says, I could never live through the death of my son over again. Could you? And you look down and you look back up with that realization of no, this is not possible, and he turns the device off. It's one of the greatest moments in the entire show, It's good stuff.
Look down and try and make it look like I know how to turn off the whack-a-mole. and still convey that I'm heartbroken. Yeah. Anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's good stuff. You came back for a brief appearance in season 10's Morpheus as Dr. Reimer. This is the episode where everyone got really sleepy.
Yeah, it's the same writers. I didn't realize it's the same writers.
Yes, Joe and Paul.
Yeah, Joseph Malikai and Paul Mossley, right?
Yep.
And they wrote both of those. Yeah,
yep.
Yeah. It's not quite as popular, I don't think, with the
quite.
It's about people. It's about people falling asleep and not waking up. So
taking lots of caffeine pills.
Oh yeah. That was that was fun too. Like I got to have a heart attack. And,
wasn't it fun?
It's serious as a heart attack. I screwed up. It was I got too into it as an actor because you do like the rehearsals and stuff. So we're doing the rehearsal, and I thought, well, I'll go for it so they can see what it is that's going to happen. What I'm going to do. So like I fall on the table and knock everything
right.
off. Like, during rehearsal, and after and fall on the floor, and then all of the poor continuity people and the set deck people have to like try and recreate what was there before. And I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. I should have been, I got too into it. But anyway, my big death scene. But yeah.
Right. Lockwatcher wanted to know, did you notice any or recall any differences in production between your season 4 appearance and then coming back 6 years later to the same group of people? Or was it just fitting back into those pair of shoes again? Except that Ben Browder had replaced Richard
right.
Dean Anderson.
Yeah, Ben Browder
and Claudia Black.
Yes, but I didn't have any scenes with her.
Okay.
Again, it was a little bit similar where there's this whole sort of comedy thing going on in half of the show that I have no part of, because it's the legendary Beau Bridges. I would have loved to have gotten the chance to work with him.
Yes.
And then Claudia Black, right? They're trying to establish her, I think, as a sort of a comedic, ongoing regular, so that was the whole half of the episode was that element of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this sleepy time on the other.
That's right. While she's taking Rorschach tests back on Earth, everyone everyone on the planet is trying to keep their eyes up. That's funny. I forgot about that.
With Robert Picardo, who's a wonderful actor too.
Yes.
Who had a huge success on, I don't know, Deep Space Nine or one of the other Voyager. Yeah,
absolutely. He was a gem. Teresa MC wanted to know what actors do you personally admire or wanted to work with or did work with that you admired?
Oh, um, there was lots. I got to work with Will Ferrell on
Elf, yes.
and I thought Will Ferrell was going to be one of those guys that was kind of on all the time, a little bit like Robin Williams, you know. And he wasn't at all. He was this wonderful, quiet, thoughtful guy. He would go and he would talk to. It could be like a really interesting background performer, and he started talking. He just started talking about fishing because the guy was from up north somewhere,
Yeah.
and they just had this lovely conversation about fishing and that, and then they roll camera and he'd
turns it off.
The Will Ferrell that we all know and love, but yeah, he was really sweet, gentle guy. I got to work with him. I got to work with Al Pacino on a film that was a bit of a not a disaster, but I just had a very small part as a waiter, and they were kind of rehearsing, and I ad-libbed something while they were rehearsing. I should have just been quiet in the background. and so it's one of the big regrets of my life that it was yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just
Hey, you took a risk.
I like one line, and yeah, but they weren't like it was just during rehearsal, but afterwards I thought I probably should not have done that. But anyway, so yeah, my Al Pacino experience. I got to work on one of the MacGyvers, yeah. The Serenity, the first one, I think. In that episode was Terry Hatcher, who went on to win an Emmy, and Cuba Gooding Jr., who went on to win an Academy Award.
Wow.
And I went on to just smaller and smaller roles until my career petered out. But yeah, so I got to meet them. Cuba Gooding Jr. was very sweet, as was Terry Hatcher. I'm trying to think if there's any other big... Tom Selleck. I spent the night in the back of a van with Tom Selleck and William Atherton, and oh, she's lovely. Not Elizabeth Montgomery. The lovely actress who plays the American wife in Downton Abbey. Maureen.
Yes,
Maureen McGovern.
I think that's correct.
Elizabeth
McGovern. That's right. Yeah.
Is that it? That's it. Yeah.
I remember her from Ordinary People. She was just a kid.
Yeah. And so I got to spend a night in a van with those guys. That was fun. That was on a made-for-TV movie. Tom Selleck. But I was very lucky in my career. There was I didn't get any sort of like nasty directors. Very few. There's one guy who was a bit of a screamer. But never at me, luckily, and most of the actors were really, really great. The problem I have sometimes is, especially towards the end of my career when I started to get more and more anxious, was if you were a demo, if you were the guy that just showed up for one day on these series, everyone was really casual and relaxed and could joke around and stuff, and they would joke around right up to the action. If you try to remember my reams of technical medical jargon or whatever the hell it was that I had to do, you know, that made it a little bit hard. I would have loved to have. I was always very envious of Gary Jones.
Yes.
Because that was, I would have loved to have had a job like that. But I can't remember. I think I asked, I don't know. It might have been Michael Greenberg even, or somebody. And I said, well, you know, thank you very much for the I think it was for, you know, the Malikai, the first time I got onto Stargate. And I said, oh, you know, or it must have been later. Maybe it was on the second one, because then I'd known that Derry had been sort of established in that
Right.
that role, you know. And they said, well, it was because I think early on it was just like a one line role. They said, well, we were saving you for a better part, you know, or something. I was like, okay, great. I think I would have rather had Terry.
Right, exactly. You know,
I think I would have rather you did like 100 of them or something, right?
a bird in the hand, as they say. So.
Yeah. You know, it's like because you get almost a grand. You know, you'd make pretty good money, $750 a grand a day, I guess, with buyout and everything. And you know, once every episode, I'm sure Gary bought a house.
Absolutely.
And then he got to go to all of the. I've never been invited to any of those
conventions.
You know, conventions and stuff. So
well, we have to change that for the next GateCon. So. You said that you're friends with Tom McBeath.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, a good acquaintance.
Oh, okay.
And the same thing with Bill Dow, just from being in the acting community and stuff.
Understood.
And I love those guys. They're really. There was the guys that go in. I was never one of those actors that was like super competitive. So I'd go into an audition. Sometimes I'd go into an audition, and if you know Bill was there or Tom or Stevie Miller, I don't know, you know, Stephen Miller. I'd go. I'd cast them. I don't know why I'm here. Like they should really cast Bill Dow. They should really cast Bill Dow. He's good, man. So
he had a great comic through line through SG-1 from about season 6 to really, frankly, the end of the franchise through SGU. And Tom is someone I've gotten to know since the show has gone off the air. And he's just one of the best people, period. He's just a great human being.
His partner's wonderful too. Karen Conoval has had a lot of. She's a very successful actress. I don't know whether you know Karen at all, but she was. She. You know the very successful new Planet of the Apes.
Yes, yeah, she was one of the apes. I forget which one.
The main orangutan.
Worked opposite Andy Serkis a lot.
The second banana.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you never know who you're going to come across and connect with in your life. Mally Sharp had an interesting question. Has anyone ever told you look like Jason Isaacs?
No, but thank you. He's a handsome man.
That's great.
Yeah, he's great. I like Jason Isaacs a lot. Thank you, whoever that was. That's very, very, very kind of you.
Raj Luthra wanted to know when there is at any point another Stargate series. Do you think you may come out of retirement and take a shot at auditioning for it, or are you good?
I think I'm good. Okay. I'm happy just like trying to make my friends laugh on Facebook.
There you go.
And being I'm not. I should say I'm retired because I'm the executive assistant to Elysium Design, which is my wife's company, which basically means I run out and get the groceries and office supplies and things like that. No, I get anxious just like I go to theater and I get anxious watching the other actors act sometimes.
You know what that's like?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So no, I think it'd be I don't think that would happen. But I guess never say never.
I mean, yeah, if they hadn't, if someone, if Joe and Paul came to you and said we have an idea for Malikai for one episode, you'd have to say yes. I mean, come on, you know, those things do occasionally happen. With Star Trek Picard, they're bringing back actors who have been out of the franchise for 30 years. You know, well, you never know.
If they, I don't know, it'd have to be like Mae West with like the little thing in my ear. feeding me my lines.
Oh, come on. Robin, This has been a real treat to bring you in and discuss this episode. I'm glad you know what an impact that character had on that show, and through that show the franchise. So thank you for coming on and joining me for this episode.
Is that it?
Yeah, I that's what I wanted to hit. Do you have anything?
Well, that was painless. That was painless. Like
See, I told you. Do you have anything further to add?
I was worried.
No.
Other than to say that I can understand why the show is as successful and has such an impact on people. Not just my episode, but the whole series, because they were really lovely people. You know, they and as were the Ricky Dean Anderson. I was so impressed with him. He, especially working with him on the MacGyvers and stuff, because he'd be first on the set, last to leave, then they take him off because he was producing too, right? They take him off.
He had other work to do than just act.
He'd have to do looping, and I never saw him lose his temper. Maybe twice I saw him justifiably say, "Come on, people, we need to get.
Let's move along."
Yes, move on. So he was lovely, and he was always very complimentary to me. Like when we shot this episode, he was always really, really nice. Who else was going to talk about? Oh, Dan Shea. I'd done a really goofy series called The Hat Squat with Dan Shea, where we were stand-ins. It was like one of the jobs that we had before we were acting and stuff. And Dan Shea was just doing stand-in work. Me and Dan Shea, and I got to see him do one of his very first stunts. He wasn't even a stuntman, and he volunteered to have them throw him through a window.
He put his hand up for that. Oh my gosh!
Yeah. And then he ended up. By the time I got to Window of Opportunity, he was like the he progressed from being thrown through the window to being the head stunt guy. Yeah. Dan. I think that's all and Don S. Davis. I didn't get a chance to work with him on Stargate because he was back at the Stargate.
Yeah.
But I'd done on a MacGyver, one of the very first MacGyvers that I did, which was called The Endangered. Me and Don and another John Dennis Johnson were poachers. And we shoot MacGyver's girlfriend's favorite bear. She's a park ranger. And so I got to work with Don. And again, he was another really genuinely lovely guy. He was done too soon. I was just
we lost him way too soon.
But on that episode also, I think we shoot her as well. We shoot her favorite bear, and we shoot her. It was Moira Wally, who went on to write and produce Breaking Bad. I think won a whole bunch of awards for it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that was it. That's all.
There's a lot of Stargate connections there.
I was trying to think of stuff that connected with Stargate that I knew, but I came in through MacGyver. I'd have more MacGyver stories, but that's for another show.
Yeah, that there wouldn't be Stargate SG-1 the way we had it without MacGyver. So many of Rick's team and Michael Greenberg's team from MacGyver were transferred into Stargate SG-1. John Smith, all these folks, and it's an indelible part of what helped make Stargate great. Was a team that largely was, many of them were already working together and came into this thing and brought people along, through the door that they had worked on with in this previous show that they knew could do the job and do it well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good family. When I was watching, it intimidated the hell out of me, but Gary Jones's episode that he did with you, talking about how they would promote from within and how everybody had a shorthand and how it was a family and how everyone got along really well. I'm thrilled to have been a very small part of it.
Well, I'm so it's such a memorable part, and it's one of those that I always think about in terms of episodes that helped shape me as a person, and as someone who just enjoys to continue to promote the show. 30 years later, it's a big it's a big contribution that was made, that you made in this
Well,
particular
thank you.
episode. So I appreciate you coming along to discuss it.
No, thank you very, very much. And
Absolutely.
thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Robin. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show on this end here.
Okay.
I'll email you in a little bit and wrap things up there. But thank you again.
Thank you.
Be well, sir.
You too. Bye-bye.
Robin Mossley, everyone. Malikai in Stargate SG-1's Window of Opportunity, and Dr. Reimer in Morpheus. Really appreciate you tuning in, and just appreciate everyone who's continuing to make my show happen, particularly my moderating team, Tracy, Jeremy, Reese, Anthony, and Summer. My producer, Linda Gategaber Fury, and Frederick Marcoux over at Concepts Web. He keeps the website going for me. So really appreciate you guys. We're working on future guests. I'm not sure if I'm going to have any next week. I may be taking the week off for that, but we'll keep you in the loop. Tomorrow we've got another round of episodes of Wormhole Extremists. Let me see which ones we're going to have here. It's going to be Secrets and Bane. Sunday, March the 19th, 1 p.m. Pacific time. We're shifting 1 hour later because in the States and Canada, we just had daylight savings start up again. And we're going to probably keep it here at that time for a little while moving forward. So I appreciate your understanding on that. And that's pretty much everything that we have for you here. My thanks again to Robin Mossley for joining me for this episode. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you enjoy the episode, click the like button. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. We'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye, everybody.